So we'll dive right into the overview. The key strengths of CBRE. We are really, it's the people. So we'll talk about the company, but we're market-leading professionals across business lines and geography. So we don't want to have pockets of strength in office or pockets of strength in retail, pockets in industrial, capital markets, property management. We want to be the best width-wise and depth-wise. And it's the people that do that, not the company. So the people we bring to pitches are who clients are hiring, not CB. We have a loyal and diverse client base. When you guys call clients, they say to me, oh yeah, we work with you in Phoenix, we work with you in Tampa. I don't know those people, but we're part of that family. So we're representing geographies so that hopefully when you do a great job in Richmond, that client will say when they're interviewing in Tampa, yeah, I work with you guys in Richmond. So you're doing more than your own local office. We have the most highly regarded, recognized brand in the industry. Deb helps us reinforce that in the media, but really when you say CBRE, it's just known as a commercial real estate leader, and we all benefit from that, and we all have an obligation to uphold that as well. Unmatched service line and geographic footprint. That really speaks to the global company, but we'll go through all the offices, over 400 around the world, so that no matter where you're traveling, you might see a CB sign or people that represent with the same business card that you do. And the ability and willingness to invest in our business. For those of you that went to the summit, they're talking about literally $20–30 million back into the company for IT and HR and communications. So we're not trying to make distributions that leave the company bare. We're trying to reinvest more and more money into the company so that y'all have more resources to do your job better. So the global leadership, it's good to be number one. CB is number one in almost every single aspect of the commercial real estate industry. Number one in leasing, investment sales, outsourcing, which is really corporate services, appraisal and valuation, and mortgage banking. So there isn't any aspect of our company that you can't reference as CB is a global leader in that. So it could be that you're working with a corporate client for industrial space and they say, well, you know what I really need is some warehousing to support that. Or I might want to do a sale leaseback, or I need an appraisal, or you guys know the drill from there. You can say, we can do that. That can be part of your vocabulary. And if you're there calling for a 5,000 foot industrial requirement and they say, no, our lease expires in 4 years, you can say, well, is there anything else your company could use? Is there any other market you might have needs? CB can cover that. So it really expands your repertoire of how you can make money. The leading global brand, this is just what I call the third-party verification. It's one thing for us to say it, but it's different when the Wall Street Journal, Lipsy Company, other people say that for us. And I think while we want to be confident, we also want to be humble. It's better to lead with, this is what other people say about us versus feeling like you're bragging, in my mind. So, these are other people who have said, you guys are number one. The client service model. So the vocabulary of real estate has continued to evolve, even for those of us that have been in the business a long time. The buzzwords that I hear more and more, and at CBRE, the email protocols are even changing. So it'll say at CBRE investor or at CBRE occupier. And the mentality of that is we really are two companies in one. And most of us do a couple of different things. But the needs of people who use space or who need to find people who use space are different than the needs of people who invest or sell. So the company is really dividing those channels, and they talk about it as investor model and occupier model. And everybody in the room probably knows how they fit into that, and they cross over as well. But you'll hear these terms a lot more. But the idea is within each of those spaces, we have a full range of services that we can provide to help those clients achieve optimal results. So the scale and diversity, I touched on this earlier. but over 400 offices in over 60 countries, over 42,000 people who have a CB business card, 80% of the Fortune 100, 190 billion of transaction activity last year, and over 3.3 billion square feet of properties under management. Just massive scale, largest property management portfolio in the country, largest shopping center management portfolio in the country, #1 in brokerage volume. So by nearly every data metric, CB is #1. So then you bring it back to the U.S. We're not using Asia and other countries to get our business here in the U.S. So if you dial it down to just America, we have over 150 offices in 40 states in the District of Columbia. When you see the map in a minute, it's not kind of that Montana corridor we're not real big in, but most of the rest of the country, CB is very deep. And about 17,000 of those 42,000 employees are in the U.S. So you think about that, over 25,000 of the employees are outside of the U.S., which is interesting. And that does help us with some of those global major clients. Here in Norfolk, we have a lot of international companies that deal with the Port of Virginia. All of us have international manufacturing companies in our market. The name recognition worldwide does benefit us even in this region. These are just pictures of some of the offices. Some of you have been to New York, right there near Grand Central. San Francisco, Chicago, Boston is a fantastic office. LA just moved. There's been a lot of hype about that, you may have seen. In Philadelphia. And then there's some of the most premier buildings and offices in the world. CB is a tenant. And then this gets to the map. I mentioned the Montana-Wyoming corridor, a little light. We got some expansion room out there. But really, the company is heavy in the California corridor, and then heavy in this mid-Atlantic Northeast corridor. Texas is a little spread out, but size-wise, that is a huge part of the company. So these are U.S. office locations. Geographically, the company has historically been in 3 pieces, with West, Central, and East. And up to a few years ago, New York was separate from East because they really didn't want to play nice with others. But now they're wrapped into the East. And even more recently, in the last few months, the Central has kind of been divided. So either merging into the West or merging into the East. So Steve Swerdlow runs the West Coast for the U.S., and he was a good friend of ours. He was part of the CB entry for us in 2000, and Jim Reed runs the East, and he's a UVA grad and very close to us. So our connections at the senior leadership from Norfolk are amazing. We can get anywhere. So if you have a client need in any part of the country or you have an issue, we do have the power to reach out into the system. We'll get into our region a little bit more, but obviously we're focused in the Virginia-North Carolina corridor. So the Mid-South region is what we call this, really stretching between what could almost be called Northern Virginia with Fredericksburg, down to Raleigh, Greensboro. We touch over to Winston a little bit. We used to have Charlotte from 01 to 06, but now that's part of corporate. So, geographically, we say we have everything in Virginia and North Carolina other than Charlotte and the Tysons Corner, Northern Virginia area. So I get a lot of calls for leads in Roanoke and Northern Virginia because they know us as the Virginia people. And I'm sure Tom and our folks in North Carolina get leads for Charlotte or Wilmington because people don't really know the geographies. And that's good for us. We want to be in the middle, and we want our brand nationally to be, those are the people to call when you have something in Virginia and North Carolina. So this is just another plug that anytime you get a lead from CP Corporate or a call in, you have a responsibility to return the call, to get help, and to follow up, even if it's not in a geography that you specialize in, because we want our name in the CB system to be, those guys are good. They're responsive. They follow up. They took care of my client. All of us have that obligation. So, please remember that when we get a call from national folks, we want to return it as well as we would hope somebody would return ours. Our leadership team, Tom Robinson, chairman, founder, 1983, so over 30 years ago. He started what is now our regional company. Tony joined him a few years later, and then myself, but then our regional corporate support team with Risa, Courtney, and Deb here today. Kate will join us a little later, and Mike Harris. So we have a terrific corporate support team. I'm really proud of them. I'd like to give them a round of applause as well. So our offices, we've got Rob here from Charlottesville today. Joe will be joining us in a little while. Tom is our newest MD, making us all look bad with his incredible approval ratings in Raleigh. And then Dotson will be joining us shortly as well. But we really do have a great regional leadership team, and I'm proud of all of them. So then we get into the vocabulary. Some of you have said, what are we, a partner office, a JV office? I've heard the term affiliate. What does that mean? So in business, particularly those of you that do retail, there's something called company-owned stores versus franchises. And we don't like to use this word publicly. So this is the internal, no presses here. We are effectively a franchise independent operator of the CB brand in Virginia. So in Norfolk, Richmond, and Charlottesville, we are 100% owned by local individuals. We pay a brand fee or a franchise license to operate as CBRE in these markets. When you go do business, we want you to have a chip on your shoulder that you're just as good as CB New York, Phoenix, Atlanta, any company-owned store. The way we operate is as good or better than any CB office in the country. And that's true. We really do have great professionals. But technically, from the CB Ivory Tower, we're not one of them. We are an independent operation. And so there's a little bit of tension every now and then in terms of how we're on the email or what programs we get access to, which many of you may have dealt with. But, I think we would say that we have the best of both worlds. We get to operate as CB corporate, but yet we have the autonomy and the independence to do what we want to do to help you all. The way we can get you technology, the way we can make decisions on benefits, and to have our own corporate support resources in our market as opposed to having to call 1-800-DALLAS. You guys have the best of both worlds, but from the corporate view, we are a little different, and that means we're an affiliate. In North Carolina, we've got some Raleigh and Greensboro people. You are a step above us in the family line. You're a joint venture office. And what that means is that it's the same type of structure where there's independent ownership for half of the company. The other half of the company is CB Corporate. So CB Corporate is a 50% owner in our Raleigh and Greensboro business. They're a 0% owner in our Virginia business. And our Raleigh and Greensboro affiliation is designed to be in perpetuity. The Virginia affiliation was a 20-year program that stretches out to 2020, which in 2000 seemed like forever away, and 2013 doesn't feel forever away. And so we're already beginning with Tony's leadership some 2020 type envisioning. What does that mean? Where will we be? What will our power be with CB at that time? And again, that's confidential to this room, but I want you to have all the facts. What I would add this up to be is that we're all the same. We have a different legal structure behind us a little bit, but we are all CBRE professionals like any office around the country. Technically, you may get a client ask you these questions, or a prospect, and you're welcome to bring me in or defer to me. But I think the main message always needs to be is we have the same training and resources as any CBRE professional in the country, and our structure works very well for our people and our clients. So I'm going to stop on that and ask for any questions that there might be, especially for the newer people in regards to those terminology. Tom?
With the 2020 date out there, do we have a right to renew, or do any rights have to be on?
We have just open discussion. We don't have a fixed renewal right, but they've said up front, we love you guys, you're great in your markets. We would like you to consider being part of the CB corporate family, which most of us don't really want to be fully. Some of us do, and there's always debate about that. But they've always said, you guys are market leaders, you do things the right way. And in perspective of this slide, they've said you are the best of the affiliates. You are our favorite, most favored nation of affiliates. You guys act and operate like us. And that's a huge compliment. It's not a compliment to some of the other smaller ones that have much smaller revenue. Martin, you could speak to that a little bit from the Columbia days. But smaller revenue, not as connecting. Some of the other offices, over time you might see them fade out. So whenever there's an affiliate that isn't renewed, I get some concern. And I would just put it back to you, as long as we're market leading, as long as we're professional and collaborative and return calls and add value, we have nothing to worry about. If we stop being that, we have a lot to worry about. Dan?
I've got a couple of comments that might benefit the newer people, Scott. As everybody heard, I've been here for a long time, since we became part of CB. And I do multifamily, and I've joint venture deals now, many deals with Phoenix office, Dallas, Atlanta, and lots with DC, Texas Corner, and Baltimore, and even the New York Metro offices. And I got to tell you, it's been an incredible thing to see that even though we are an affiliate office, I am treated with exactly the same respect I would be if we were coming on, I believe. I mean, you have some difficulties with vouchers, we're not in their voucher system. But other than that, it's incredibly seamless. And when I go to the National Multi-Housing Council convention every year, I share the big suite and have my meetings with all these national institutional clients. And I've got to tell you, it's really quite incredible. From the get-go, I was welcomed into the Southeast group, and it's all
That's good. Thanks for sharing that. How about the retail people, Kevin or Will or Christina? I mean, you guys have been to ICSC conferences. Just in all candor, do you feel like you're welcomed and a part of the company, or do you feel like you're a little separate? What's your impression?
For me personally, I've only been to the Virginia one as a CE
Okay.
employee, so I guess we'll find out in New York. But I have talked to some of the corporate offices on the phone and haven't had any issues at all. So.
Right.
Yeah, I've been welcomed with open arms, and I've actually been since the business with some corporate guys, so
Right.
it's been a good relationship.
So I hope out of this you feel some pride that we have the best of both worlds, and that if you find that you're not treated equally or there's a problem, please call me or email me. I can't help you if you don't tell me, but it is a two-way street. We have to be professional and collaborative with them, but absolutely they have to be that with us. Kim?
I wanted to add, I work on a national hotels team here locally, and to piggyback off of being welcomed, they've tapped me to, during our 3 annual conferences that we have across the country, I coordinate all the meetings for all 35 CBRE hotel guys across the country. So regional management in Chicago puts that onus on me to do for everybody, and Doug and I are the only ones who are affiliates. So it's totally integrated.
Ashton, we've got some newer industrial folks here as well, and the industrial team seems to really organize themselves like others now, but probably as a leader, as a company within the company with industrial conferences. Can you speak to how you're treated?
Yeah, you bet. I would also say it is seamless, and there is no apparent distinction made between us and the corporate offices, except for perhaps even almost a little bit of envy from the folks in corporate who say we don't have quite the same amount of oversight that they do to simplify their business.
Okay. All right, anybody else with any questions on that? In terms of how we run the company, one of our mentors is the Boston office. So, we're going to do about 50 million in revenues. This year is the Mid-South. Boston's going to do about 110. And their people aren't better than our people. They're in bigger markets, but we're growing. We have a lot of upside, and we try to learn from the best in the business. I would, in this room, say that they're one of a couple we can learn from out of this whole group. And we're really trying to emulate New York, Atlanta, DC, Nashville. So, we don't consider, this is snobby, the affiliates our peer group. We consider the best CB offices in the country our peer group. So we want to way outpace this group, just like we want to outpace our competition locally, and we want to be seen as the best of any office, any region in the country. I think we have more collaboration than any other region in the country other than the Northeast. So most of the other offices are very independent, and you guys working together can really enhance that. Okay, this is the territory. So I get a lot of questions of, when does CB have to call us? And where can I go? And what are the boundaries? So there's a term in that affiliate agreement, or they used to call it the partner agreement, of what is your territory. This does not mean a limit on where you guys can go or where you can do business, but it sets some boundaries geographically of where legally we're supposed to be involved when CB Corporate has an opportunity in our region. So I've got a North Carolina map and a Virginia map. Maybe the Raleigh folks can speak a little bit, and the Greensboro folks. Tom, this is your territory. Have you had any issues in your tenure where people have been around you and you're trying to figure out, is that our market really or not?
So in North Carolina, we have the affiliate offices of Greensboro and Raleigh, and then there's a corporate office in Charlotte. So we work very closely with all three of those. As far as how we explain our Raleigh-Durham territory, it's kind of halfway between Raleigh and Greensboro, and then it's all the way to the Atlantic Ocean to the east. And so we do get a lot of phone calls from the Wilmington area, and a little bit on the East Coast as you go up north, but people really, they understand that. So we work very closely with the other two offices when it goes west.
Okay. Jonathan, or anybody from Greensboro?
I think that's pretty natural boundaries.
Okay. So there's two parts to this. One is, what does a territory mean? And the second is basic geography. So a lot of us think we know the markets, but if we were to ask what counties or what cities, the level of knowledge starts to fall off. The Raleigh area they call the Triangle. So Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. The Greensboro area they call the Triad. So you got Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and High Point. In Norfolk, we would say, the Peninsula and Southampton roads. And then Richmond, you've got above the river, the counties, the city. I mean, you've got, every area has their own geographic niches. But territory-wise, what this means is if you hear that a CB broker is working in our territory without involving us, you need to let the managing director know right away, because we may have the ability to demand being involved. I would like to say that 95% of CB brokers in the country are collaborative, follow the rules, and will use best efforts to involve us. But those 5% that don't really piss us off. And don't let it go without being addressed, because it could make it easier for it to happen again. So protect your turf. This is our house, the football analogy. And let us know if you're seeing things happen. There are exceptions, and nobody likes to be explained why there's an exception. But it could be that we have a conflict. We represent the building that the tenant is in, and there could be an issue there. Or it's a national portfolio of which this is one asset. There's a couple of gray area exceptions that nobody likes to hear, But for the most part, I just want you to have the attitude that we are going to be involved on transactions in our market. And Virginia, well, just one quick thing also is you realize how much of the state isn't our territory. And a lot of the leads we get are outside of that center. So Tom might get leads in Greenville or Wilmington or the far Asheville or the far western part of North Carolina. And the same would be true in Virginia. We're really stacked on the right side, if you will, or central Virginia with Richmond and Charlottesville. But we get a lot of calls from Martinsville and Roanoke and the western Christiansburg, and we just got one for Radford, further west. And people are surprised by the geography, but it takes as long to drive to the western part of Virginia as it does to drive to Atlanta. So we have to know our geography and know what our territory is. As far as full-service national competitors, JLL is really the one that I hear people talk more and more about. The good news for us as a region is that their commission structure is 50-50 from 0 to 500,000 and 55 above 500,000. We're not going to lose many brokers to that structure. The bad news is they are really good nationally with corporate clients. So we are seeing JLL control a lot of tenant rep deal flow, and that concerns us, and corporate is putting a big push to be better and better at that. Each of us could have stories of JLL's pockets of strengths, but I would say nationally they are our biggest nemesis, and professionally I give them a ton of respect for what they've done. So don't mistake my confidence and pride in our company with cockiness that we don't have great competitors. JLL nationally is a great competitor. Cushman & Wakefield, the brand isn't as well known regionally as Tallheimer. So the independent operator of that, and I give them a ton of credit for their aggressiveness. They have pockets of strength, but Raleigh's come on fast. Richmond, they're a great competitor. Norfolk, they have more brokers than we do. They're just 1/5 as productive, but they could turn that tide, so we're always watching them. Anybody want to comment on Cushman? Tom? Transwestern and Newmark Grubb are lesser known, but the industry is evolving, and the key separation, one second Daniel, is the investments we're making. So there's a lot of chatter about Cushman financially, how they're doing, and the rate of growth of these other firms, and do they have the cash to continue to invest in the stuff that y'all need, the IT, the infrastructure, the CRM, all these things that brokers are demanding. Some of these other companies are really not able to keep pace. Anything else on the national competitors? Anybody want to comment? Okay, and then as opposed to being full service, there are also niche specialists. Dan, you see these a lot in the multifamily group, with ARA at the top being an excellent provider with some pockets of strength, particularly in Charlotte and DC. Hodges Ward Elliott is a hotel firm that I'm sure you and Doug run into. Moran and Company is a niche multifamily provider. But then on the left, the Eastdil Secure, the HFF, the Marcus and Millichap, those are national leaders, particularly strong in like a New York or Chicago or DC. We don't see them as much in our region. But we need, when I talked about investing in different lines of business, we want our investment sales practice in Norfolk to be as good as Eastdil in New York. So it's just a different mentality that to win the biggest assignments, that's who you're competing with. You're not competing with Harvey Lindsay or Colliers Richmond. So that's the scale that we're aspiring to.